On this episode of the Hockey IQ podcast, we bring on Doug Revak, my brother. Really great conversation. Played some high-level hockey for quite some time. So we're going to break this into two bits. First bit, we're going to talk a lot of good stories. Sidney Crosby, Doug and him sharing some ice. We'll get into that story and more. Really exciting. Part two, we'll go more into some depths of goaltending specifics and how shooters can get one over no matter what the goalie does. So it's a real fun episode. Excited to share this one. On the podcast today, we bring on a special guest, my brother, Doug Revak. Played goalie growing up here, so we're going to get into some interesting stories. Play with a few players that many of you may know in the NHL these days. So thanks, Doug, for coming on.
Hey, Greg. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. I was wondering when I would get on this, and great to be here.
Well, not that hard since we're doing our first ever live in-person Hockey IQ podcast. So brothers meet up and we got a podcast.
Yep, we got the basement set up going. So I got to be nice, but this should be fun.
What a guy. So let's get into it. Maybe give us a little background on your playing career.
Yeah, very unimpressive, short career. Obviously grew up playing in the Cleveland area for the Barons system. Back when the AAA league was the Midwest Elite League. I know it's had many iterations since then, but when I started playing as, I think, a peewee, it was the Midwest Elite League, and it was a few Chicago teams, the Young Americans, the Mission, and then a bunch of Detroit teams, Honey Baked, Caesars, CompuWare, and then us, and we would get slaughtered constantly. But no, it was a ton of fun. I played there for probably 4 or 5 years, and then ended up playing a couple years with you at the high school level, my freshman and sophomore year around Cleveland, and then made the transition back into AAA. Actually over in Pittsburgh for a few years. I played, well, I guess they changed names as well. Now both teams started playing U16 for the Pittsburgh Vipers at the time, and then played U18 at the former Pittsburgh Hornets, now the Penguins Elite program. And then played a year of junior hockey on the New Jersey Titans. Again, the league changed, but when I was there, it was the Eastern Hockey League. So very short, unimpressive career, but had a lot of good experiences. And I get to tell people that I played against a lot of really good players, but I was never that good.
Falsities, very good. Wouldn't say you got your due. You're I'm going to put in quotations here, undersized goaltender, but unbelievably sound from a technical standpoint. We have a lot of goalie experts that come on here, but I can say that I probably have a leg up on most commenters because, I've been around you for quite some time, and the goalie knowledge you've thrown down my way is quite impressive. I put you up there with Mitch Korn, who should be in the Hall of Fame. So it's a fun time.
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but we'll take it tonight.
Excellent. Well, let's get into some of these stories. So you mentioned that you played against some guys that are half decent. Give us a story to get our appetite going.
Yeah, I think the first one that would pop to mind back when in the summertime, the Elite Prospects Summer Showcase was going on. I think it was kind of more towards the beginning. I remember, that's where I played against a lot of guys that ended up, in the league and are still playing today. But one guy I remember playing on the team in first couple games, there was a lot of people at our games that normally wouldn't be. The coaches were salivating over this guy. He was, it was probably when we were 13, 14 years old, and he was already 6 foot or above, smooth skating defenseman. And, all we would hear about this kid from Dallas who's so good, and his dad played in the NBA. And I'm sure you're by now figuring out who that would be, but it ended up being Seth Jones. But, at 13, 14, I mean, what a player. And it's funny, we played a bunch of guys, like Connor Carrick, the Seth Jones of the world that, they were the best players at, 12, 13 years old. And lo and behold, they are still the best players and are playing in the NHL. So it's been fun to watch, those guys grow up, since we were kids and being elite players and are still today.
Yeah, and you had a story that I always think is absolutely hilarious. I forget who exactly it was. You're like, the kid was just so good, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to score here," and then just went down and did it. So you got to dive into that a little bit further.
Yeah, I think that one was at a showcase up in I want to say New Hampshire, and we played the New Jersey Rockets, and they were a team that were fully loaded. I'm a 94 birth year, and they were loaded with 97 birth years, I believe. Just really young kids playing up a level. And they had this one guy, and he strolled. I think we went up 1-0 early in the game. And a lot of guys, and he was very undersized. He looked super, super young. And I think we were 18 years old at the time, and he was playing up. And he strolled by our bench as guys were giving it to him and said, hey, watch this one. I'm going to go right down the rink and score right here. Watch. Face off, goes right down the rink, dangles, boom, goal. And that was Jeremy Bracco, who ended up going to Boston College, then on to the O, then into the pro ranks. I'm not sure exactly where he ended up now, but he was in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. But that was a hilarious one. And another guy that you're like really impressed with, that ended up making something of himself, and it's been fun to track him.
Yeah, what a player. Never translated the NHL, currently playing over in Germany in the DEL, and played in Finland the year prior, but unbelievable, just the talent. I'm curious, who do you think is the best player you've played with?
Played with or against?
Give us one of both. Start with against, and then maybe with, or whatever way you want to give it to us.
Yeah, I mean, probably the most notable guy, I already mentioned him, but Seth Jones has to be, probably the best player I ever played against. He signed a big contract with Chicago, elite defenseman in the NHL. That's tough to beat. There was a ton of guys that played against, Kiefer Sherwood, I think was the name. He's in the NHL now, kind of on the bubble. Sheldon Dries, similar story. I think he went to Western Michigan. Was in the Colorado system for a long time. Connor Carrick, another guy, played on the elite prospects team with the Detroit Summer Showcases. Really good guy. Was in the Toronto organization. I think now he's actually in the Kraken organization as a new defenseman there. So just some of the guys that it's cool to play against over the years and watch them go on and play in the league.
So you've had an outside/inside view on a lot of these players. I'm curious, maybe what separates these guys from the rest of us?
Yeah, I've actually thought a lot about it. And I don't know if I have like a great answer. It's funny because, I mentioned a lot of these guys, when we were 12, 13 years old, they're playing AAA travel hockey. They're the best players on their team in those leagues. And a lot of those guys, continued to be the best players throughout. And then there was guys that, weren't very good and you really didn't know about at 12, 13, that at 18, all of a sudden they're really good. So there's multiple paths to get there. I think kind of the big one that you really see, and you see it at a young age, and it just grows with guys like Carrick and Jones, is hockey IQ. Just that hockey sense early on, making plays, thinking about the game. And I think that's a translatable skill as you age. There was plenty of guys that, at 13, 14 were more mature physically that dominated the game. But as guys got older and stronger and, the physical playing field kind of leveled out, it was always the guys that could think the game that moved up the ranks and continue to be elite players.
Well, that's just beautiful. I mean, what are we talking about today? Hockey IQ newsletter, Hockey IQ.
Yeah, what a plug.
I couldn't have scripted that, so I'm glad we're ad-libbing and you're still dropping it in. Good things there. But you played on an unbelievably talented team. Maybe it wasn't so much the individuals, but you had one hell of a depth team and a whole team with the Pens Elite. Didn't you guys end up winning the AAA league?
We did. We had a great team. My 18-year-old year, we had, probably not the most skilled team on paper, not the most guys that moved on, although there were a few in there, but we had, such a close knit, really the definition of a team, played well off of each other. We had, complementary players throughout the lineup. My goalie partner, Colin DeAugustine, was a stud. I was a nice backup for him. So we had a great team, and we had a ton of fun. And, we ended up going on to the playoffs. I think it was actually the first ever playoffs for the league, the Tier 1 league, up in Blaine, Minnesota at the Schwann's rink. And we, kind of weren't really expected to do all that much, and ended up, going on and making it to the semis. I think we played the Oakland Grizzlies in the semis, beat them, and then ended up playing Bell Tire, who had a really, really skilled team. Guys like Hoxkwy, who was in the Chicago organization. Dennis Yan, I think, was drafted by Tampa. A really, really skilled team at that time. And we played them in the championship, went into overtime, and one of our guys that actually joined the team midway through the year, AJ Coleman, who's a great guy and a great player, scored an overtime goal, 5-hole, which he deemed the 5-hole rocket that beat Bell Tire in the championship. So that was really cool for our team and for the organization, the Pens Elite organization, to take home the U18 championship that year.
Yeah, your time in Pittsburgh was an interesting one. Won, I believe, a state title in hockey for the high school team as well, and then won a golf tournament. So what an athlete.
Yeah, well, it was fun in Pittsburgh. I think I lived in Ohio for most of my life. Ended up finishing high school, went 11 years of school in Ohio, and then graduated, went to school for 1 year, my senior year in Pittsburgh at Quaker Valley. And in Pennsylvania, as you know, Greg, you can play both travel and high school hockey, which in Ohio you cannot. It's either or, travel or high school. So it was really fun. We had a great team in Pittsburgh. We had a bunch of guys that I was playing with, and had a really, really good group there. And we ended up winning the state championship with that team, and it was a lot of fun, while also playing on the travel team. So I played with a lot of great players in the high school ranks in the Pittsburgh area. Jake Pilowitz, Adam Pilowitz, who plays on the Penn State's team, is actually assistant captain this year, and his 5th year there. So a lot of fun times, great memories, playing around Pittsburgh area, and it's only gotten better since I've been there. So it makes me proud to be an alum.
Yeah, Pens Elite is one heck of an organization, and what they've done there is awesome. Good friends with Dan Mays, the U18 coach there, and a lot of the people who've done some nice work. So it's cool to see them rise so quickly and into being one of the premier organizations. I'll put you and the crew as pioneers.
I don't know. I don't know how much we did, but no, it's been good to see the growth of hockey really in the Midwest, and obviously in Pittsburgh. But yeah, it's a great organization that produced some really high level players over the years.
Well, high level players, but just great athletes in general. I mean, let's go back and talk about your golf story here. I'm going to let you take this one away. I usually tell it over everyone else, but no, you had one heck of a golf tournament.
I'm assuming that you're meaning my first golf tournament in Pittsburgh. Is that correct?
Yeah, the guys didn't exactly know you by then.
Yeah, no. So as I mentioned, first year in Pittsburgh, went to school 11 years in Ohio, came to a new school senior year. I played golf in Ohio, played golf 3 years, varsity at previous school, and then really wanted to focus on hockey as I came into Pittsburgh. That's really what I moved there for. But it was funny because Mom, as you know, put a little pressure on me and really wanted me to play on the golf team at the new school. which I didn't plan to do. Was convinced to go out to tryouts. It was a 2-day tryout. First day I played awful, played just terrible. Didn't know anybody, played awful, and was almost expecting to be cut, honestly. And second day, played like myself, played much better, and ended up making the varsity team there, senior year. And we actually had a really good team, pretty old team. I think we had 5 seniors. They were all pretty good players. And first tournament, I really didn't know anybody. And it was an hour-long bus ride. It was like one of those before school started. It was the first tournament, hour-long bus ride. I sat there, maybe said a few words to the guys at, 6 a.m., get to the tournament, and end up shooting my career low. First tournament as as these guys are looking on. I think I made like 6 birdies and shot 75, which is a little embarrassing that I made 6 birdies and still shot 75 and not something lower. But at that time, it was my career low. And, coming back into the clubhouse, the guys were looking at me like, who is this guy? And ended up winning the tournament as an individual. And then, was a complete letdown after that, as that was my career low. But yeah, had fun playing golf. We had a good team that year. We went the furthest in school history. So, that senior year in Pittsburgh was fun from both a hockey and a golf side.
Just what a legend. Just come in, win the damn thing. Way to make new friends. So that's pretty cool. Awesome stuff. So we've kind of touched on your career, some good stories along the way. But I'm curious maybe to dive into some of the goaltending knowledge that you've passed on to me. We've talked about the post play, talking RVH, VH. We're talking plant legs, all that kind of stuff. As a guy who, again, in quotations, undersized goalie at 5'10", like you had to be on your technicals better than the next guy because you had to use it to survive. And I remember just how hard it was to score on you in practice when we played those 2 years. It was like, I could torch anyone in the high school league. As soon as I get against my brother, he's got my number. There's probably, me a little bit in there, but at the same point, like, I knew your technicals were on. Everyone else knew it, and they were bringing their A game to get one by you. So I'm curious, how do you think you played the game? How did you approach the game to play at such an elite high level, win the tier 1 AAA league? I mean, that's no easy accomplishment.
Well, first of all, I don't appreciate the short joke in there, being an undersized goaltender, but no, I was average height.
In quotations.
Yeah. I think a lot of it had to do with, just being kind of a student of the game and understanding tendencies. I think it was 2 things. That, also having a baseline skating ability. I think, moving about the crease in an efficient, quick manner and explosive is key for kind of undersized, in your words, undersized goaltenders. You look at guys like UC Saros, who just has complete control of his edges and can move any which direction at any point, is always in control of his body. That's lower and upper body. So I think it was that, and just like focusing on building that foundation from a skating and movement standpoint, and just trying to be like as efficient as possible, moving throughout the crease. But I think the one thing that really benefited me over the year was I'm just a general personality trait. I'm just like a general perceptive person, and enjoy kind of studying things. So I would, watch a lot of games of opponents. When I wasn't playing, I was really paying attention to, opposing players, their tendencies, how they shot, things like that. So I think memory banking, a lot of that came into play when I was in the net. And, obviously I knew you very well, having faced you so many times. So I kind of knew the moves, knew the tendencies coming down when you were going to do the old 5-hole breakaway move, or top glove. I kind of understood the setup of that. So I think that was a key thing for me, as an undersized goalie. You get to higher levels, and at younger levels, guys don't shoot hard enough to really, you can react to pucks, and then you get to a certain age where guys have a little bit more zip on the puck, and there's certain situations where you simply can't react. It's more of like a blocking or just putting yourself in the best position to make saves. And I think at higher levels, I really understood, what those tendencies were and trying to put myself in the best position to make those saves. But it all came from, understanding where on the ice players were, what shot they were, what their tendencies were, and just taking that all into account and kind of computing and making decisions from there. So I think, any goal, and it's been so impressive over the years, bigger guys have picked a lot more up on this and are just unbelievable. You look at guys like Vasilevsky, who are just so smart around their crease, but also massive. And that's obviously the ultimate combination. But, I think for undersized goalies, if you can be very perceptive and really understand the game and tendencies of shooters, depending on where they are on the ice, what their options are, where they're going to shoot, I think that's a huge difference maker.
Observational would be the one word. When I think Doug Revak in the net, like he's observing everything and he knows everyone around him at all times.
And it's funny. I had a coach, I think it was my first year AAA. I had this wacky coach that instead at the end of the year banquet where normal youth coaches would give trophies for everybody, he gave words. And so he literally printed out on a piece of paper words to describe his players. And my word at the end of the year banquet was studied, which is a little wacky for, a 12-year-old to get at an end of the year banquet, but he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Not at all. I mean, you were that annoying little brother that was very observational to the moment that you get away with something and then go crying to mom as the baby boy. So I'll second that one.
Yeah, guilty as charged there, but no, funny story there, but he wasn't wrong.
Anyways, there were some good nuggets you had in there that I want to revisit. The first one is a real quick hit for us here. When you're talking about blocking saves, what are you, blocking versus reactionary, what does that mean?
Yeah, to me, that really means, blocking, you're able to make yourself big. And that typically is on more in tight shots. You're trying to cover up holes under your arms, just over the pad, those sort of things where there's not a ton of room for the puck to get on an angle to get by you. You're just trying to be tight and eliminate as many holes as possible. Where reactionary, you typically is, more further out shots where you have time as the puck comes in to react and make those saves.
Excellent. I always put blocking. You're just blocking and taking up as much space as possible. Reactionary, you can get in there to it. The next quick item I want to touch on here is just seeing where players are. What are you looking for? What are your data points that you're collecting to better understand how you want to play a situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think, as my career winded down, I was coaching some of the high school level goalies. I think that was like one of the things I didn't quite understand. It was almost like the Wayne Gretzky, like he just did it and it was hard for him to explain as a coach, and he didn't understand why other guys didn't understand what he was thinking. And that was one of the things for me. You have a guy, I'm a normal goalie, catch with my left hand, and I'd have a right-handed shot coming down my left side, 8 times out of 10, he's shooting top glove, especially at the younger levels. Right. And for some goalies, they would just give up that space. So, I think it changes over time, depending on what level you're on and how talented the players are. But for me, there were certain spots on the ice where you could, think about it in a probability perspective. And, like I said, a guy coming down on like a 2-on-1 to my left side, defenseman takes away the pass. A lot of times he's going top glove. So whether you want to show that and then take it away from him, or you just, strictly want to cover it however you want to play it. But there were certain plays that, hockey is a repeatability sport, generally, especially at some of the lower levels. And the more that you see those plays, the more you see the results of those plays, you just kind of memory bank those. And, you think about it from a probability standpoint of, if this scenario plays out, typically where does that shot go? And so that's kind of how I thought about it, and thought about save selections, during my playing days.
Or even just like as you're thinking about shoot first pass, because I always remember like you would randomly get across a crease and have a chest to a puck, and it makes it look like it's an easy save when most goalies are having to go over and flash the glove, or they're getting beat there, and meanwhile it's hitting you in the chest. Same thing with like UC Saros. Like I'm appalled by how many guys shooting his chest, and then I'm like, okay, well it's not the shooters, it's Saros is reading this really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard skill to master. He is an unbelievable goaltender at it, and he's really matured over the last few years, and I think he's starting to get the notoriety that he deserves. It's really tough to pinpoint exactly where that comes from, but it's just a cumulative thing of understanding what happens in front of you and anticipating plays. And sometimes you're wrong. Listen, like sometimes, you're wrong and you get beat on a goal and people look at you and say like, oh, how did you make that decision? Why didn't you stop that? That was an easy one. And it was like, well, most of the time this guy's making this pass on this to this point of the ice. And, this 1 out of 20 times he didn't do it, but the 19 others, I would have been right there and made an easy chest save. So, I get frustrated sometimes, hearing about some of the post play, and which I know is a controversial thing, but it's all about probabilities and putting yourself in the best position to make saves, which Saros certainly does. And but I think a lot of it's anticipation, and understanding where on the ice the puck is coming from and where the threats are, and understanding what you need to do to get there in the most efficient manner. I think is really the key to making those type of saves.
Well, since we've been talking about tendencies, I think it's time to give away your secret, since we never play against each other anymore. What am I doing as a shooter to be an idiot and give away what my tendencies are? Obviously, knowing me and seeing it a few times is good. Like what are some things that give shooters away? Specifically me.
Well, we still playing alumni games together, so I can't give them all away. But now I'm trying to remember. It has been a while, but I think certain skating patterns as you come down the ice, you can kind of set up for a certain. I'm thinking about a breakaway in particular. You're set up for a certain beak. So like if you think about TJ Oshie in the Olympics, he kind of turned that on its head, where he came down in the same exact pattern and then did a different variation of his move off of that. But a lot of guys come down kind of in the same manner and set themselves up to make the move that they want to. So that was a key indicator. I think speed was another one, because certain moves are done kind of more in a slow manner. Other ones are done more at high pace, depending on what you're doing. So that was another key indicator. And I think just hand positioning and shoulder fakes was another one that I remember, thinking about is, okay, his stick positioning is more out in front of him. It's probably going to be a deke trying to go around me, where, if he had it on his side, maybe it's more of a shot type move. So understanding the different moves that were in the player's arsenal that was coming down on you, and taking those few things into account was a dead giveaway. You were pretty good. I think you're selling yourself short. I had seen you thousands of times. But I think for anybody that had seen you just a few times, you're pretty good at disguising.
I appreciate that. I'll take some credit there, getting you to the AAA level. How about that? We'll call it even.
What's fair is fair.
Excellent stuff there. So I like that. That last one you did on breakaway. It's like just literally a guy stick handling in front of him. Obviously, that's going to be more of a deke. I'm trying to remember who the goalie coaches you had that really pointed that out when, we were like 12 and 13.
Yeah, I don't know, not to toot my own horn, but I don't know if there was a ton of goalie coaches at that age. One guy that I worked a lot with, his name was Dave Marlin out of Philadelphia. And he coached and played a lot in the European leagues, but he was a big influence on me. I can't remember specifically, who kind of taught me that. I think it was just like you said, being somewhat of an undersized goalie, trying to make it, it was, you kind of have to pick up on some of that stuff to make those sort of saves and move up the ranks. So, I think it was a combination. Dave Marlin was a great goalie coach for me. Learned a lot from him. But I think a lot of it was just experience and, playing against high level guys and, making mistakes and learning from those, and then, going back down to your own level. And it's just a cumulative process. I think it takes a ton of time, and especially for goalies, I think everybody knows, goalies just take time to mature. And I think it's a large part of that is just experience and, being in situations that over time you just remember. And, when you're in those situations at later times and higher levels, you can say to yourself, okay, I've been in this situation before, know what to do, know what save selection to make. And, it's just a cumulative process over time.
Yeah. And I've talked with Dave Caruso with USA Hockey. He's played pro, coach goalies at the pro level with under Lou Lamoriello. And, he talks a lot about training goalies, just putting them in the jungle. He says he wants jungle cats. You don't want shots, 3 lines, that's very obvious. But like you said, putting yourself in situations consistently where you can start to pick up on these things and accumulate all that experience is massive. I'm curious then, just even more on like maybe the technical side, what are the things that you remember picking up from Dave Marlin there?
Yeah, he was kind of more, I mean, this was of the age of the Mika Kiprusoff kind of Finnish league style goalies really taking over the NHL. When Pekka Rinne was coming into the league, Kiprusoff was dominating. Who was the guy at the Minnesota Wild? He was another Finnish goalie, Backstrom. Yeah, that's it. So he was at that time training under coaches and over in Europe, and really learning kind of the mindset that those guys had in Finland. So he brought a lot of that back to the US. And when I would, train with him during the summertime, a lot of what he preached was active hands. And, before that, you had a lot of the Canadian style, the Francois Allaire, the blocking, Patrick Waugh, J.S. Giguère type goalies. But Dave really brought in the active hands. And so I think that was the biggest thing that he taught me over the years, which truly helped me, given my kind of playing style that I had to play. I couldn't just be a blocker. I'm 5'9" on a good day, so I had to be reactionary and have active hands. And it really helped on in tight plays too, where instead of having your hands kind of locked right over your pad and just straight up and down kind of blocking, you were out taking away angles, coming up from the ice where the puck is, really taking away that angle towards the top, portion of the net. So that was like the big thing that he brought back. And that was, something that the coaches that I had worked with previously, didn't really harp on. And he was the one that really brought it to my game and really taught me that sort of style. And it's, if you look at NHL goalies today, that style has really crept in, even in the US goaltenders, Canadian goaltenders, it's not the same style as they were. They've evolved, and I think they've taken a lot from kind of the European Finnish style.
Yeah, you were the first goalie I noticed that you would push your glove hand through the puck during the save, which I thought was like, when I picked up on it, was absolutely genius on how that cuts down the angle. And you let yeah, we keep joking on undersized, but like you literally didn't matter what size, you had the most annoying glove hand I've ever played against, and that at any level. And I've played even pickup against some guys that have gone on to play professional hockey, and I just hate your freaking glove hand. It just robs me all the time. Obviously the tendencies and all that, but even just like in close, like boom, your glove was on top of the puck. It was like, even if I raised it, it was like the original box control, right? Like controlling those little boxes all the way up. Probably didn't call it that at the time, but not with the new vernacular, that's basically what it is. So it's pretty crazy. And I want to go back to your point where you said you play with some high level goalies, because I think we have a big story that we haven't touched on. But when I said the best player you've played against, you really missed the mark there. I think you know exactly which story I'm heading towards. but basically glove hand didn't help you that day.
I'm not sure which story you're talking about here. Which one are you going for?
I believe it was Maxime Talbot, maybe, or Kunitz was really mad at the end.
Gotcha. No, that was a super unique opportunity. I mean, basically, you could say I was in the NHL for a day, for 2 days. So I do have NHL on my resume. Unfortunately, it was never actually in the league, and it was during the lockout years. Yeah, that was one of the years that I was playing in Pittsburgh. I think it was 2012. The NHL was locked out, and I got a call randomly. I was at a billet house, and I got a call midday, and I had already graduated. It was the second year I was playing, that second year of U18, and I got a call, and the guy, he calls me. He's like, "I'm the equipment manager of the Penguins. We're practicing. Some of the guys that are still in town. Generally some of the guys that had kids in school. Lived in Pittsburgh full time, and we're still there. We don't have any goalies. Can you come down and practice with us?" And I thought he was totally kidding. I thought this was like a friend, like playing a joke on me, but it was for real. And there was a handful of guys, probably like 10, 12 guys that were, living in Pittsburgh, some of the older guys on the team, like Pascal Dupuis, Chris Kunitz, Tyler Kennedy, Derek England, at the time. And they were, living and still skating during the lockout. And there was no goalie. So, ended up going down to Penguins practice in Pittsburgh at their old practice rink and skated with them for a day, which was just absolutely incredible. And, obviously my first thought was, is Sid or Malkin going to be there? But when I got there, they weren't there, and the first practice, and it was still incredible. A guy like Derek England, who people would generally say is more of a tougher stay-at-home defenseman. I was just enamored by his skill set and how talented he was. Let alone some of the top guys on the Pens. So that was absolutely incredible. And then a few weeks later, got the same call. So I must have been a decent enough goalie at that practice to get invited back. And the second practice, Sid was there, which was just unbelievable. So, I think that's probably the highlight of my entire career was, being able to say that skated with Sidney Crosby. And the best story, well, two great stories from that practice. Fortunately, my dad was working in Pittsburgh at the time, so he was able to come down and kind of take photos and videos of some of this stuff. But two great stories were, number one, they were doing a battle drill in front. It was a one-on-one battle drill where pucks were thrown in. And it was Crosby versus Max Talbot. And Crosby ended up sticking him right in the face. And he's leaking blood and absolutely helicopters the stick over the glass. There's no one at the rink, just helicopters the stick over the glass. And Sid, sorry, Talbot. But that was a great one. And then Sid, at the other end, we were doing a drill, and he was kind of behind the net in Gretzky's office, and he's passing pucks out front, coming around the net, and then one time he banks one off the back of my leg, and it goes in. I'm like, I just turned to him like, man, why you got to make me look bad? Like, I'm out here doing my best, trying to make one out of every 5 saves, and why do you have to do that? He's like, sorry, man, it's my job. So two cool experiences. Practicing with the Pens, like I said, a highlight of my career. Got to say, obviously got to meet Sid and spend a little bit of time with him, but to be able to skate with him and take shots was just incredible.
It's just his job, man. The guy's got to score goals. Give him a break. It's not easy being the greatest hockey player in the world, especially at that time. I mean, as peak Sid, Canadian hero, gold medalist, the whole 9 yards. So that's pretty cool. But I do have some video from Dad of you making some saves on Crosby. So he can't be that good, right?
He probably got one of very few, but he was pretty good. But it was funny. I still remember, like I said, guys like Derek England, I was so impressed with their skill set, with what they could do on the ice. But once Sid was out there, it was just next level. He was 3 steps ahead of even those guys, and it was so apparent in all the little details of his game. Flipping pucks, catching, on the back end while skating. And he was just so far ahead of those guys, and those guys who were just unbelievably talented.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. So before we let you go, though, we'd like to remind you to please like our podcast, subscribe to it, give us a follow, and share this with all the hockey people in your life. We really appreciate growing this community, this podcast. Remember, we also have a newsletter, the Hockey IQ newsletter as well. Really excited to continue to grow this. So please help us grow this further by liking, subscribing, following, and sharing with everyone. So appreciate you all. Take care.